Open up Netflix, spend hours browsing, find nothing interesting, exit out, stare at the screen, and repeat for the rest of the night. I've put this off for far too long. Hold on a second, boys. I haven't seen this one before.
It's all out of control.
They got me. I needed to watch this show, so I canceled my subscription and downloaded all the episodes online. Bastard heavy metal dark fantasy is an actual fantasy and not an isekai, something almost unheard of in the modern anime scene. The show looks and feels like it's straight out of the 80s with the gore, nudity, and aggressively masculine hero.
So do you have feelings for me?
No, I hate you.
12 seconds later.
Animation-wise, this show blew me away. Not because it's particularly god-tier, but because it never relied on bad CGI for any of the monsters. I'm not one to nitpick over bad CG, I look at it as a trade, one crowd filled with bad CGI background characters equals beautifully animated fight, that sort of thing. But here, aside from a choice few instances, the show maintained a consistently pleasing look. The studio, Linden Films, really put that Tokyo Revengers money to good use. Yeah, but the story, what's the story? I don't know. I think a couple of demons have a battle that destroys most of the earth or something, and as a result, society reverts to the Dark Ages, but with actual magic and monsters too. The Kingdom of Metallicana fights a losing battle against the armies of darkness, and in their desperation, they undo the seal on this little boy by having a pure maiden give him a little peck on the lips, which unleashes the all-powerful Rob Schneider, Dan Schneider, Dark Schneider, who promptly saves the day from certain defeat. But there's a problem. As you most likely gathered from the dude's name, he's not really a good person. Dare I say it? He's sort of a, Well, there you go. I had some concerns going into this show that it would ultimately devolve into the king of the incels running around having gamer moments for 13 episodes, like a certain other anime. But I'm happy to report he's only a casual gamer. Dark Schneider may be a bad guy, but he's not really a bad guy. The more you watch, the more you learn about him, particularly about how much worse he apparently was in the past. The modern Dark Schneider shares a body with this dopey, pure-hearted kid, Lucian. Half of him wants the standard take-over-the-world thing, but the other half just wants to be with the girl who's been taking care of him. As a result, this Dark Schneider is literally me. Wait a minute, is he having sex? Never mind, boys, just retract that last point. Jokes aside, Dark Schneider makes for a very interesting main character. He's a wizard built like a warrior who has women throwing themselves at him every episode. What I find the most interesting about him, though, is how he contradicts himself. He does a lot of saving, even if he goes about it in a not-so-heroic fashion. I'm not saying he's some complex anti-hero in this subversion of a traditional fantasy story that would be pretentious and inaccurate. But he is fairly different from most modern anime leading men, and it's a change I more than welcome. I'm getting a little bit tired of the stuttering, "Sumimasen, gomenasai," weak soy boy protagonist.
Except you stay.
I hear you saying, my most cultured individual, how can you enjoy watching this perverted jerk lay the pipe and do the misogyny on a regular basis? Does this not go against your religious convictions? First of all, they released this thing in the middle of one of the hardest hitting white boy summers in history. They knew exactly what they were doing and who the target demographic was. But more importantly, we all have sins to overcome. Lest we forget that even those who were once lost in depravity and vice can still seek forgiveness and redemption.
The Confessions of St. Augustine, Chapter 13, San Francisco.
There's a lot of stuff here that I should, in theory, not like. Mainly, I'm talking about the fan service. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of fan service, but I do have two exceptions to my general disdain for the stuff. One, if it's a comedy. In that situation, I just treat it like I would any other joke. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't, but it never takes me out of the experience by ruining a scene I was supposed to take seriously. Second exception, style. Sometimes a show will legitimately convince me that the skin-tight outfits or prolific panty shots are actually necessary for the sake of the story's style. This second exception is basically an artistic cope, but we can tell the difference between the nudity in the Sistine Chapel and an OnlyFans page, right? Illegitimate Child kinda checks off both of these. It's a funny little comedy that got more than a mere chuckle out of me every episode, and the whole show feels like a drunk D&D campaign. Fantasy creatures, overpowered character builds, ninjas, I'm sure that fits in there somewhere. I already told you the main kingdom is called Metallicana. There's actually a lot of musical references here. I may have a good relationship with my father, but I recognize Metallica, Megadeth, and Guns N' Roses. It's basically JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but for straight people. All that is to say, the visuals fit right in for the style this show is going for, and it often leads to some funny scenes. I'm really glad I found this show. I haven't seen many people talking about it, so I figured I'd try to give it the attention I think it deserves. Bastard doesn't reinvent the wheel for comedic fantasy anime, but that doesn't stop it from being one hell of a fun ride. The only real problem I have with the show is that this is only season 1, and it ends on a cliffhanger. I haven't seen a concrete date for the remaining 11 episodes, which is really giving me flashbacks to how Netflix mishandled Stone Ocean. But in the meantime, there's always the manga, which I guess is still ongoing, though it's been on hiatus since 2010. There's also an OVA version from the 90s, if that's more your speed. But enough about all that. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and until next time, Ave Maria, Deus Vult, and don't you dare skip the OP.